Alright, welcome to the show. This is the first time in a while that I've done any sort of video work. This is the off-season recap for the 2011-2012 off-season for the House of Zards. I am Trek Fan, here to show you all the fascinating things that happened in the summer of 2011, as we see here. We're going to start with our main team, the Wizards, here. And as you see, Washington ended up re-signing Andre Miller, the professor, bringing him back. Brought in Caron Butler, former Wizard. He's going to start at small forward, at least initially. Signed old man Raja Bell. He's like 35 or something. Darko as just kind of a flyer. And then finally, we're going to bring back old Tony Battie. The Wizards finished in the second round last year. They did pretty well, but obviously not as well as they would have wanted to do. Washington got swept by the Bulls, which obviously was a very interesting storyline. I did not anticipate. I thought we were going to beat the Bulls, but that is not how it went. Moving onward here. Okay, so hold on. There we go. Gotta remember how to do this. It's been a while. All right, Philly didn't really do much. They signed Nene, brought back Mo Spites and on an extension. J. Will, Scalabrini, the White Mamba, Damian Wilkins, Matt Carroll. Their team largely remains the same. We've got the Bucks over here. They didn't do a whole lot. They got Jared Bayless. He got a decent deal. Kufos got a decent deal. They signed some vets to fill in the bench. Nothing special there. The Bulls had a pretty decent offseason. Ivy, Rafer Alston, Chris Wilcox just filling in some guys. They got Noah back on a good deal. They didn't really need to do much. They made the conference finals. Almost beat the Magic. But of course, Orlando beat them, then went on to win the whole kit and caboodle against Kobe. Cleveland, they need work. They signed nothing of any value whatsoever. Dostorovich, chasing the bag wherever he can get money. We've got the Celtics. They did a little bit. They got Mo Will. They went and grabbed Jody Meeks. Those are two solid signings there. Ryan Hollins, Marcus Banks. Who cares? The Clippers signed Old Man Peja and Zydrunas Ilgauskas. They brought back Ronnie Turioff. Got a big signing in Chauncey Billups. He was a big name to go to them. He's going to be their starter, ostensibly, right there. And they're on their way to making a leap, perhaps, with this young squad that they have. We've got nothing for Memphis. They weren't active at all. They have a pretty stacked team, so there wasn't really any need for them to do anything. The Hawks did a little, but really a bunch of bench guys, guys you don't want to see play major minutes for Atlanta. You'll notice that most of the symbols and logos have been updated to the modern counterparts. That's because I got tired of looking at the older stuff, so I went and updated them. The uniforms are also updated for most of the teams. I've added in a couple of new created ones in there, as we'll see during the season. So that's going to be some fun with some alternate courts. We'll show off. The Heat brought back B. Diddy. They got Chris Kaman to re-sign, but that's about it for Miami. Nothing special. Hornets were boring. Bench guys. The Jazz did a little bit. They brought in Nate Robinson. They got Steven Jackson in there, but realistically, just some vet guys. Nothing special on them. The Kings, as you can see here, they put a lot of money out there, but did they really get anything to help them? These two signings are not sure. You got Jamal Crawford and Shannon Brown. Crawford's going to put up buckets, but is that what you need for the Kings? Do you need buckets at this point, or do you need defense? Sacramento's got a young team. We'll look over the rosters just to refresh everybody's memory, including my own, about where they are. But they are probably 2 years away from being any real threat in the West. We've got the Knicks. They were very busy. Eddie House, Jerry Stackhouse, this guy whose name I can't pronounce, Tony Douglas came back on an extension, and you see all these signings from last year as well. We've got the Lakers. They didn't really add anything via free agency. They did make a major trade though, and we'll get to the trades after we get done here. The Magic didn't really do anything worth of note. We've got Dallas. They did all right. They didn't really do anything of note either. Just two valuable vets. The Nets, as you can see, they went back to their retro logo, because I actually like that a lot more than their current one. Their uniforms also are kind of retro, very 90s-esque. But as you see with the Nets here, didn't really do anything. They were a pretty solid team last year. Lost in the first round to the Wizards, but clearly another year will make them better. We've got Denver. They didn't do anything of note real here. I mean, they gave Ilyasova some money. He's great as a stretch four. Is he going to be worth anything more than that? Doubtful. They gave him some money. And they gave him some money. But as you can see here, the one name missing from this list is Carmelo, and that's because he did not re-sign with Denver. Denver had a chance here to do something to bring Melo back, and they let him walk. Was that a smart play? I mean, in real life, they traded him, and they got a great deal out of that. But here, they decided to roll the dice and see if they could snag a big free agent to come and help Melo out, and Melo wasn't coming back, so Denver got burned. Obviously, this is going to change the calculus for some people within the dynasty/franchise here. They watched Denver try this, and it blew up in their face. So the Nuggets, but it's not a terrible team. We'll go over them. We got the Pacers. As you can see, Indiana did nothing of any value. The Pelicans are now in existence, so congratulations, New Orleans. You got the Bird team, and they, got Wilson Chandler back. No surprise there, really. Signed Arroyo, who did pretty decently last year with the Heat, and that's all you got. That's all you see on them. Nothing for Detroit. Sadness. The Raptors, they were active in the free agent market. They got some help for John Wall. We're going to look over them in a second. Houston, there we go. That's where Melo went. Houston has put themselves in position to be a major player in the West this year. They've got a great staff here of Kyle Lowry, Anthony, Katino Mobley. Like, this team's going to be tough if they can gel. We'll see if they gel. The Spurs were, as you would expect, not particularly active. They brought in David West on a big deal. Good money for the Spurs, but otherwise, that was it. Just some veteran signings. Not anything particularly exciting. The Suns, they were really active in free agency. The question is, did they really do anything of any value? Like, Richard Jefferson might be a good signing. Can he be more effective than he was with San Antonio? I'm not sure. We will see. I have my doubts, but he's there. So is Tim Thomas and Sasha Pavlovich. I butchered that. As you see, the Thunder, they re-signed Jeff Green. Obviously, they like him a lot there. They brought in some solid vets. Nothing exciting otherwise. You've got the T-Wolves. They didn't really do anything special. Big Baby Davis. But otherwise, this team is young and still needs to figure out what they are. The Blazers made some decent moves. Obviously, Jarrett Jack's a good signing. Good off-the-bench guy. Dunleavy, he's got a stroke, but he's probably overpriced for what he does. But the Blazers could pay him money, and he might be able to fetch something at the deadline. As you see, they brought back Gilbert, they got Brandon Roy to come back, so this team is locked and loaded with these two as their pillars for the future. Hopefully Roy and Arenas avoid injuries and or bringing guns into the locker room. We'll see. The Warriors didn't really do much of anything. I mean, they signed Kenyon Martin, but that's about it. Golden State is banking on the youth of this team and the guys they have, one in particular, Steph Curry, and we'll see how they turn out. And that's it as far as the signings go. Now, let's see. Trades, right. So there's the ones I did. Bunch of stuff moving around. We've got let's see who had some trades. Yeah, the Hawks. Okay, the Hawks traded Jeff Teague to the Lakers for Sean Livingston and a first rounder. The Hawks needed to get rid of Teague. Like, they found somebody they like better in the draft. Teague wasn't really putting up the numbers that they wanted, and so they flipped him for a vet and a first rounder from the Lakers. That was a solid get. We've already reviewed that. Flips around. Yep. Nothing special here. Who else? Pacers? No, I did that. Trades. Right. Oh, here we go. Right. Okay. And the Raptors got some help from the Rockets. The Rockets needed to clear some cap space to sign Melo, so they traded Ariza and Jordan Hill for a top 3 protected, what's going to be a 2013 first round pick. That might be a short-sighted trade for Toronto. I mean, obviously they still have John Wall, and they're building a young team around him. But is that the best deal they could have done? That's the deal they wanted. That's the deal they got. Ariza's a good plug-and-play guy, and Hill, not as good, but he's young, so maybe he develops here. And those are the only 2 trades of note. Let's go over our rosters. Alright, as you see, the Wizards are all about one RJ Jordan. You got Pat Bev, Miller, Duval. He was a second-round pick. I like him. We'll see if he ends up doing anything. Jordan, Rajah Bell, who's like 35. Old man Caron Butler, vet. He got injured last year, but he was putting up some pretty solid numbers, And I missed him in Washington. I liked him a lot when he was playing with the Wizards, so I brought him back. I think he's going to end up splitting some time with Darrington Hobson III, our dedicated, 3-point shooter guy. He's super confident. Like, he's got swag out on the court. And then behind them, we've got Earl Clark, who's basically a 3-4 power forward, and, if necessary, I can play him at a 5. And then Cartier Martin behind him. Good defender. Inconsistent scorer, but good defender, and if I need to deploy him, I will. So I've got these 2 guys as potential trade bait if need be. We've got the power forward situation. It's Blatch. We've got Markieff Morris, who I might end up starting just because he's got that great 3-point shot. Now, I'm not sure if I have come to potentially regret the trade, well, not the trade, the draft pick I made for Morris. I'm not sure if I should have got him or if I should have gone for a center, but he's who I picked, and I'm going to stick with that. Blatch, I'm not sure if he's a starter. I'm going to be honest. I think he's a super 6-man. I think he plays that 6-man, big man role off the bench, and he just brings a lot of energy off that, and he seems really happy with those minutes. So, but the biggest question for the Wizards is going to be, what do we do with Greg Oden? He's not committing to anything, as you can see. So he's there. We've got Darko right behind him. I'm giving him another chance. Obviously, Darko did not really pan out in real life as more than just a role player, and even then, he often wasn't a role player on any good team. So we'll see if Darko provides any big minutes. I've got plenty of big men who I can shift into places between Clark, Morris, Blatch, Oden, and Milchick. So one of these guys one or 2 of them might end up getting traded. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Next up on our list, the 76ers. Their top 5, pretty good. I mean, Iggy, Thad Young, Drew Holiday, Whiteside, Lou Will. Holiday has got AI behind him. I'm not letting him sign anywhere else. He's always going to be a 76er. As the god of the league, I demand that. And then we got White Chocolate behind him. So if things go badly for the 76ers and they get hit by major injuries at the point guard position, they will always be entertaining there. Guaranteed. We've got Lou Will, Rip Hamilton, the vet right behind him. Rip came back on a very, very nice veteran deal. Whether or not that's going to end up proving to be useful to them is another question entirely, but what Rip lacks as far as offensively, he makes up for in defense. We've got Iggy, Marcus Morris, the other Morris twin, who I thought about drafting, but with the way we were at on the small forward position, there was really no need for him. Iggy is there. He's thinking about coming back, so we'll see. If Philly doesn't do well, if they start going downhill early, Iggy could be out. So that's something to maintain, something to look at. We got Thad Young, Charlie Villanueva, who, I mean, he didn't really do much last year, but he's a six-man type off the bench potentially. We've got White Mamba, Brian Scalabrine, and Whiteside and Nene Kriskic. So we'll see who comes up there. The Bucks are an interesting team. They started out last year hot, then they got real cold, and then they limped into the playoffs, but they got there, and they gave the Magic a couple really good games. Like I was surprised at how well they played in that first round series versus Orlando. It was something else. So the question is very much as it comes. Move that out of the way because I'm trying to remember exactly. Let me look up real fast what the end results were. Yeah. So here we go. These are the results as far as that first round series. Obviously, you can see that the Orlando and Milwaukee had a great first round series. Like, the playoffs last year were pretty good. So, the playoffs last year were pretty good. So, nothing terrible on that. Alright, so, back over to the rosters. Alright, so, yeah. The Bucks didn't really do anything exciting in free agency. You got Jennings, Bayless is right behind him. Bayless did pretty well as kind of a bench scorer in Portland last year. He got some cash money. You got Salmons. Shumpert's was their first round pick, and I think he's going to be good for them, but we'll see if he manages to develop here. Brandon Jennings is not known for doing a lot of assisting, but he put up major buckets last year. We'll see if he maintains that path. Aminu, Delfino, you got Troy Murphy, LMM, Luke Mbaude, defender extraordinaire, not so much for everything else. And then behind that is the big man, Andrew Bogut and Kufus. Bogut is a potential free agent type deal. He might want to come back next year. He might not. We'll see. Jennings also, I think he's got a 2-year option coming up. Yeah, so he's fine. So we'll see what happens with him. The Bulls stacked team almost made it back to the finals for the first time since the OG Jordan, Michael Jordan, RJ's dad, was in the league. They are great. They're a great team. Top to bottom, this team is stacked, and the only thing that will hurt them is injuries. And obviously, Derrick Rose is here. In this universe, he's got much better knees, so hopefully he won't, end up suffering those career-defining injuries that he has in the past in the real world. You got Rose, Duhan, Rafer Alston, Heinrich, Crawford, Ivy, Dang, T-Mac, still hanging on, still valuable as a role player and veteran mentor for this team. James Johnson, buried on the bench, and I'm not entirely sure if he's going to ever see any playtime here in Chicago. He might be some trade bait as we go through the season. He could be a trade candidate. Stoudemire, you got Gibson and Bertrands. Bertrands was their first round pick this past draft, and you got Gibson sitting here. Gibson's contract will be up next year. They find him expendable. He brings great defense though, and you know you're a little worried about Amari because much like Rose, he has some injury history, so you're not entirely sure how that's going to play out. And you got Noah and Wilcox behind them. The Bulls, top to bottom, I would say one of the top 3 teams out east. Cleveland. Cleveland is, yeah, they're young. Bledsoe, Leonard, Jameson, Verjao, Delonte West, not David. You've got a lot of young bodies on here and a mix of vets who are just basically hanging on for the contract. This is not a team that is ready for prime time. They might end up being ready for prime time, but they're not so far. Kawhi, you know, the second round pick this year, a great get for this team. We'll see if he ends up developing into what we know he is, you know, in real life. Jameson, who's basically here unless he gets traded, and I don't think anybody's going to take on that, you know, 17+ million contract deal. And Verjao also has that same problem. Injury history plus large contract, not going anywhere probably. JJ Hickson, Eddie Curry hanging on by a thread. Hickson, he's not really bad, but he's not like good either. He's a mix here. He's a mixed bag. He got some pretty good stats last year, 12 and 9. You know, his percentages not great. Cleveland is a roster in transition, and we'll see if they end up forming anything. But as you can see from last year's record, they were awful. So I don't expect them to be anything more than bad this year. The Celtics still hanging on to that core, that team, but boy, they got beat up in the playoffs. They lost in the first round to the Bulls, 4-0 sweep. And this is kind of a changing of the guard situation here. You've got Rondo, he's the star of this team, clearly, top to bottom, he's the best player. You got Pierce, Garnett, Ray Allen, all of them with 1 year left on their contract. All of them potentially could re-up. All of them also could find themselves new homes. It really depends on where they go this year. You know, you got Rondo, Mo Will behind him. You got Allen, Jody Meeks behind him, and Tony Allen behind that. Pierce, Samardo Samuels, who was a good late first round pick, but he didn't do jack diddly last year. Those stats clearly prove it. He might end up being a future starter for this team, or he might have to sit on the bench for another year. Paul Pierce is kind of in that zone where he could go chase a ring, or he could finish off his career as the guy for the Celtics. And in real life, he wouldn't chase rings. You know, he was traded to the Nets, and he ended up on the Wizards, and he ended up on the Clippers, and he didn't get anywhere. And it was kind of sad. Like the last time he was any good was probably when he was on the Wizards, and he hit that game-winning shot in the playoffs. I remember that, but I don't necessarily know if I want him to leave this team. As the god of the league, I kind of value loyalty for stars and franchise stars, so we'll see what happens here. You know, you got Garnett behind him, the very young Kenneth Faried, the Manimal. That's a good pick for them, I think. But it's clearly changing of the guard here very soon. KG fell off pretty hard as he aged in real life, and I think he could end up doing the same thing in this league here. And Perkins at center with Kwame behind him, doing a decent job as a role player in his career. The Clippers, young but dangerous. Griffin, Gordon, Billups, Jordan, and good old Michael Beasley. I mean, this team has got some talent. You've got Billups, Mario Chalmers, and Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer was their first round pick. I don't know if he's going to see any time this year, but he's got time to marinate on the bench for once. Shooting guards, you know, Gordon and Courtney Lee, both of those guys, good shooters, good spot-up guys, good guys off the dribble. Wesley Johnson over here, Mike Miller, Peja Stojakovic, Blake Griffin, Beasley, and Malik Allen. Looking good on all cases. And then DeAndre Jordan, Ronnie Turnioff, and the vet, Zydrunas Ilgauskas. Memphis, really good team, top to bottom. Randolph, Conley, Gay, O.J. Merrill, Marc Gasol. This team has got, you know, they're a 50-win roster. Last year, they lost to Dallas in the first round. It was a 4-5 matchup. So, Lost in 6 games, wasn't bad. Obviously, they wanted to get better. They brought back just about everybody, and they're betting on internal improvement. And you know what? That's a pretty good bet. I mean, I'm not gonna put it past them. Internal improvement is a good thing. Now, I don't know if their internal improvement is going to be enough to offset the rest of the West, but you know, we'll see. We've got the Hawks, obviously Atlanta, not good. Josh Smith, I think, he's gonna regret taking the money, and he might end up wanting to get traded. You got Lance Stevenson, Enes Kanter, Marvin, Kimba is here. Kimba is the present and the future veteran. Sean Livingston backing him up. So Kimba, I'm excited for. They also got a great little second round pick here from last year that they signed, and this kid could be something. He's a generic, you know, creative player, but he could be something for them. Lance, Williams, great shooter, but is he really worth the money that he's going to demand? Probably not. Josh Smith, Kanter is a big get. Good rebounder, decent post defender, but I question how he's going to be able to function in the evolving league that we have here. We'll see what happens with him. Miami, probably one of the most talented rosters, top-heavy wise. This roster is got major moneymakers in Wade, Bosch, Kaman. B. Diddy over here as point guard, C.J. Watson and Corey Joseph behind him. D. Wade, Sloan, who they spent a first-round pick on, back in 2010, last season. He did okay, but obviously not the numbers you want to see from a near lottery pick. Dorell Wright, CDR, Bosch, Haslam, and Larry Sanders. Larry was a second-round pick last year. He didn't see any time. Obviously, his contract is up at the end of this year, but perhaps Larry Sanders might see some playtime. Haslam is aging out as that first big off-the-bench role that he has had on lockdown. So we'll see what happens with him. Kaman, Jermaine O'Neal, Bismack Biyombo. He was their first-round pick this past year in 2011, just a recent draft, and he's gonna be something good here in Miami. Like, Miami does really well with defensive guys. I have good feelings. Hornets, formerly the Bobcats, the new Hornets, which, we've got. They rebranded a year earlier in this league because the Bobcats just hurt my eyes. Those uniforms. Oh my god. Anyway, Gerald Wallace, D.L. Felton, Tyrus Thomas, sorry, and Dallin Barrett. This team has put a decent amount of money in their point guard position. Whether or not that's going to pay off, we'll see. They traded for Gerald Green, formerly of the Washington Wizards, and he's going to slot in as their second guard here. They got Landry Fields right behind him. Gerald Wallace, Bogdanovich. He was a great first-round pick here for them this past year. Diaw, Thomas, Dallin Barrett, Diop. We'll see what happens. The Jazz, they were awful last year. I don't know why this team is as bad as they are. Like, they should be a lot better than they are. They have the talent. So, we'll see what happens. They have gotten rid of AK-47 and replaced him with Steven Jackson, Captain Jack. He played for the Hornets last year, Charlotte. He did pretty well, as you can see. This man was all over the place, stat sheet stuffer. So, we'll see what happens. But obviously, this is a potential trade me type issue. If they have another season like what they had this past year, Darren Williams is out. Wesley Matthews, previous Vasquez, Jackson, Burks, they just drafted him this past draft. He's going to be a major player either way if this team contends or if they blow themselves up via having an awful season. Millsap, Drew Gooden, the always reliable veteran who just seems to go team to team and put up basically the same stats. Jefferson, he's in here now. Big get for them last year, but it just didn't pan out. Obviously, the shooting percentage is kind of a problem. 48% as a center is bad. That needs to be 58% if he wants to be real good. We've got Sacramento. They've got Kevin Love. They've got Paul George. They've got Jamal Crawford, Johnny Flynn, Omar Caspi. This is a top 5 that's really good. But they didn't quite put it all together last year, but they were in flux. This year I have hopes for Sacramento. I think they can do well. We've got Crawford, Shannon Brown, former Laker, Paul George, Caspi, Love, Dante Green, who I was always big on back in the older days of 2K, 2K9, 2K10, 2K11. I like Dante Green a lot. Spencer Hawes and Valanciunas. I think this team is going to become better when Valanciunas overtakes Hawes. When that happens, I'm not sure. Hopefully sometime soon. But we'll see what the Kings coaching staff decides. You know how the AI goes. The Knicks, powerhouse team. I mean, they had a tough first-round series last year. 1-7 against Miami. Then they got promptly stomped by Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic. 4-0 in the second round. Tyson Chandler got thoroughly outplayed in that series. Just abused. The Knicks have not fundamentally changed their approach at all. It's the same Knicks, but they've brought back the whole squad. They haven't really changed anything about them, as you can see from their roster. CP3, you've got Kyle Korver over here. You got LeBron, Bill Walker, Stackhouse, David Lee, Jeffries, Jawan Johnson. I think he's a second rounder. Yeah, not sure if he's even real. Tyson Chandler, Boban. He was their first round pick. Boban might be the guy who gives them what they need on the bench, but clearly they need bigger bodies to compete with Dwight Howard, who he's taken the Superman title from Shaq at this point. Superman's got to have at least one ring. Dwight's got one ring, so he's the next Superman. We'll see what happens with the Knicks. I'm not sure. It depends on the matchups in the playoffs. Like this should be a really good team. They should be a top 3 seed. I think the top 3 seeds this year are probably going to be Magic, Bulls, Knicks in some order out in the East, but we'll see what happens. The Lakers got some help for Kobe. You've got Kobe, Gasol, Bynum, Artest, Odom. As you can see, they traded for a new young point guard, Jeff Teague. Teague is going to re-up, no doubt, for major money from the Lakers. You got D-Fish, the vet, right behind him, friend of Kobe. Steve Blake, right behind him. Kobe himself, Michael Redd, shooter. Kobe still putting up a just ridiculous amount of points and stats. You worry about how many minutes he's playing. He played almost 36 last year, so you really don't want to burn him out. I'm worried about what happens, but Kobe, if he manages to avoid injury, he's still got a chance to top MJ's ring count. He's got 5, and the MJ of this universe has 5 too. So, can he be better? We'll see. Got Ron Artest, Poindexter. He was just bad last year. He might be a wasted pick for the Lakers. And Luke Walton behind him. Gasol, Odom, Vesley. He's another one of those guys who didn't pan out at all in real life, but maybe here, not being forced to start, getting some time to marinate on the bench, he'll end up being better. Bynum, Asik, and Birdman Anderson. Asik was a big get for them, and I think he's going to be defensively really important, especially if they see Dwight Howard in the finals again. Bynum is evolving. I expect to see him crack. He's going to be double-double territory this year. I think he's going to be a 12-10, 13-10 type guy. We've got Orlando. It's Dwight Howard and a bunch of guys, but they're a bunch of guys who play their roles well. You've got Jameer Nelson. He's a fantastic pick-and-roll partner for Dwight. Earl Watson behind him. Redick, Willie Green, Vince Carter came back. I mean, and it's hard not to blame him. He won a ring. He got 17 points last year. He did very well. We know that he's going to last a while. He's Vince Carter. You got Eubanks behind him. Did well. Didn't shoot well, but he put up buckets. He needs to work on those percentages. Rashard Lewis, Brandon Bass. They got a lot of power forwards. One of these guys is probably going to end up getting traded or leaving. Lewis obviously is in a contract here. I strongly suspect he will leave. Yeah, he's going to get his money somewhere else because the Magic sure aren't going to pay him. They won, but I don't think they're going to want to pay him money as he ages. And then you got Howard and Gortat, both the same age, surprisingly. And I don't know if that's right or not, but they are the same age. Dwight put up a fantastic year last year, 22 and 15. He is leaning towards getting paid. He's got a player option. We'll see if he picks that up. Gortat's right behind him, but you know he's locked in for another year, so that's fine. Dallas did all right. They got to the second round last year, beat Memphis in round 1, lost to the Spurs in round 2. You know, but San Antonio had the best record out west, so it's not a bad loss at that point. Obviously, this is an aging team. They need an infusion of youth fast, sometime soon. Dwight, Terry, Marion, Kidd, Haywood. They got Pereira behind Kidd. They got nobody really young in the shooting guard position. They got Swaggy P over here at small forward, and he may end up taking over for Marion or Jet. Dwight, Al Harrington, Nico Melli, and then Haywood and Ed Davis. 2 UNC guys, Haywood and Ed Davis. The Nets are flashing their retros. I've decided to set them back to like 1990s Nets because those uniforms are actually pretty cool. The early 90s, that's like the ones you see with the alts that Brooklyn's running this year, here in 2021. But in 2011, we've got Devin Harris, he's good. Joe Johnson, you got Evan Turner. He didn't exactly do a ton last year, but you hope that he's a stat sheet stuffer, so if he can just get this up by about 10%, we'll see. Outlaw behind him, Boozer, Humphreys, Brooke Lopez, Cole Aldridge. Okay, this is a good team. 45 wins. I don't know if they're going to get very far, though. They don't have anybody who's really better than Boozer or Joe Johnson, and that's kind of a problem. And this is a top-end talent type league, and their top-end talent's a bit on the B+ side as opposed to the A+ side. The Nuggets. This team is decimated after what happened with Melo. Like, Melo stayed, they tried to play it out, they tried to win, and it backfired tremendously. 20 wins. It was a terrible year. So, as you see, Denver now, they're kind of in the wilderness. They're in a bad place, but they've got some young talent. You know, you got Ty Lawson over here, and behind him, yeah, that is little Isaiah Thomas. Whether or not he evolves into a great player in this league is a question, but he's here. J.R. Smith got major money to stay. Behind him, Gerald Henderson. You got Jimmy Butler was their draft pick, 4th overall this year. He's going to be the next guy. He's going to be the guy who is going to take this team to the next level if there's a possibility of them getting there. We'll see. Derek Favors, you know, he's a good player, though not one who takes enough shots, really. Probably needs to take more, but he's growing, so we'll see if he grows in that way. And then Roy Hibbert, who's not happy, as you can see. Morale discouraged, and it's tough to blame him for that. The Pacers, they got Gordon Hayward. They hired Brad Stevens. You know, they got those Indiana connections going right now in Indiana. Young team. Hayward and Irving united together here in Indiana as opposed to in Boston. Nene, Jason Thompson, Aflalo. This is a good young team, but it might just be that they're not ready for this next step yet. Aflalo, Barbosa, Hayward, Rush. You got Jason Thompson and Psycho T, Tyler Hansbrough, one of my favorite players in college back when he was in North Carolina. You've got Nene and Tristan Thompson, who was a good second first-round pick for this past year. He's also with Kyrie here, and he's going to be important off the bench. We'll see if he gets major minutes. The former New Orleans Hornets, now Pelicans, they are a team that they're stacked. Like, they just barely missed the playoffs last year, 41-41, as you see. And they've got a lot of young talent. A lot of young talent, though. A lot of that talent is concentrated in similar positions, so I would imagine the Pelicans are going to be looking to move some people. But, you know, you've got Collison over here, you've got Bradley, Marcus Thornton. Thornton put up some major buckets last year, despite the fact he wasn't getting more than like 27 minutes a night. This dude was bacon. You got Bradley, who was getting more minutes, better defender in theory, but that defense came at the cost of an efficient offense, as you can see. I think Thornton probably should be the starter, really, over Bradley, but Bradley's getting mod simply because of his A+ defense, and it's hard to see. It's hard to blame them for that. you've got Jeremy Evans and Wilson Chandler. These two form just a duo of switchy small forwardness, big guys who can play, small or big. Gallinari, Mirotic, two big-time shooters, neither particularly afraid of taking deep shots. And then Okafor and Mozgov, big man who can hold down the middle, grab the rebounds. You see that the Pelicans have a strategy. Whether or not that's going to be enough in the brutal West is the question, as with all young teams. We've got the Pistons. They're a roster in flux. I mean, when Elton Brand is your best player, it's not a good thing. Jeremy Lin, of course, put up some really good numbers last year. The Harvard grad, he was drafted pretty high, just outside the lottery in the 2010 draft. You got Bynum behind him. You've got Stuckey, Ben Gordon, and Liggins, Liggins isn't going to end up being anything, but Stuckey did pretty well last year. Tayshaun Prince, the last remaining veteran from those championship contending Piston teams of the mid-2000s. Behind him, Derek Williams, big athlete. Obviously, Tayshaun, 31 in the final year of his deal. He wants to re-sign back, obviously, but the Pistons may get more just trading him. We'll see what happens. Brand, Max Heel. You got Mo Spites, Judo, and nope, I was wrong. Ben Wallace is still here, so it's Ben Wallace and Tayshaun Prince. Those are the only two guys left from those mid 2000s championship Piston squads. And obviously, those two and Elton Brand. There's gonna be a lot of money floating around for Detroit next summer. They might be able to sign somebody big. They might not. We'll see what happens. Toronto, they made some moves. They got John Wall some help by trading for Trevor Ariza and Jordan Hill. You got Wall, Calderon, DeRozan is over here, young but still developing. DeQuan Cook, who's better than I really expected. How good is he? He's that good. All right. You've got Trevor Ariza, Hedo Turkoglu, who went here for the bag, and he got the bag. But man, he's not putting up any stats. I strongly suspect Hedo is going to be gone by the end of the season. He's going to either get traded or he's just going to go off in free agency. Ariza is the big get. He's a prototypical 3-and-D guy in his mid-20s. He didn't put up a lot of big numbers last year. That's because he was splitting time with Shane Battier. He's going to be the full-time starter here. So I strongly suspect he'll put up better numbers in Toronto. Mari Johnson and Tobias Harris. Tobias really should be taking over this role very soon. Mari Johnson, he's not somebody who's going to take you far at that position. He's a bench guy. He's a good bench guy, but he's not a starter. And then Bargnani, who he's a stretch 5. He put up a bunch of points, but his rebounding numbers were woeful, awful. Jordan Hill might end up being the guy who jumps in here. Maybe. We'll see if the Raptors make that move. The Rockets, they're a really good team out west. The Rockets could probably compete for a 4 or 5 seed, I think, based on what they're looking at. They still got Yao, Lowry, and Aaron Brooks. Dynamic duo in the backcourt. Kevin Martin, between him and Mel, the shooting is going to be just superb. Randy Foye, former Washington Wizard and Minnesota Timberwolf too, as I recall. He's going to be putting in buckets, obviously. Offense is not going to be a problem for this team. We've got Carmelo Anthony, Chase Budinger, and Shane Battier. Battier re-signed on a very sweet veteran deal, but I think he's going to end up wanting some playtime. But he's a good glue guy, so maybe he won't. You got Scola, this guy whose name I cannot say at all, but he can score, he can shoot, he just wasn't efficient at all last year. Yao and the young Nikola Vucevic. This is the guy I wish that I, as the Wizards, had drafted, and I regret not drafting him at this juncture. But, I forgot he was in that draft, I'll be honest. So, he's going to be the guy who takes over for Yao sometime soon. Maybe this season, maybe next season. The Spurs, continuing to be the powerhouse that they are, probably a 1 or 2 seed out west. You know these names. Tony Parker, George Hill, they drafted Brandon Knight, Manu, Larry Hughes, Martell Webster, AK-47, David West, DeJuan Blair, Bonner, Magnum, one of the coolest names in the NBA. Duncan, Tiago Splitter, and Old Man Brad Miller. This team made the Western Conference Finals last year. I fully expect them to be competing for a title. Phoenix, they missed the playoffs. Not by much, but they missed the playoffs. Steve Nash is in the final year of his deal, and I believe that he will probably end up getting traded or asking out, one of the two. This team is in between a couple of different places right now. Obviously, the Suns made some trades this offseason. They seem to be going younger. You got Nash, Dragic here. You've got Jay Rich, James Anderson. You've got Richard Jefferson, Jared Dudley. You've got Trey Tompkins, who was formerly on the Wizards. He wanted a bigger role, so I traded him out because I wasn't about to give him a bigger role. I like him a lot, but not enough to give him that bigger role. Channing Frye, and then Al Horford, who I love as a former Florida Gator a lot, but he didn't really do much in Atlanta. We'll see whether or not he is able to do more here in Phoenix. OKC, these guys are coming. They were a 6 seed last year. They're probably a 4 or 5 seed at this juncture. This team is stacked. Durant, Westbrook, Harden, Green, Ibaka. Like this starting five is just envious across the board. The only thing really that could hurt them is injuries. Obviously, you don't want that. They drafted Chandler Parsons, former Florida Gator, this year. He's a shooter off the bench. Jeff Green, Collison, Hakeem Warwick, Ibaka, DJ White, and Jerome Jordan, who they drafted the previous year and did very well. But obviously, Serge is going to take over that role and probably do better. He wants more. We'll see if OKC can give him more. But they finished with 48 wins last year and were a 6 seed. They could easily finish with 50 and be top 4 seed. Minnesota, poverty. Awful. The Timberwolves are desperately trying to figure out who they are and what they will be. Whether or not they ever do is a question that only 2K can answer. You've got Rubio, the Spanish Pistol Pete, Tyreek Evans, who you want to be good, and he had a good season, but the team didn't win. You've got Klay Thompson, just drafted. I think he's going to be big for this team, but I don't know if he's going to be big right now. It might be 2 or 3 years down the line. Corey Brewer, former Florida Gator, behind him. You've got Danny Granger, Big Baby Davis, and then Boogie Cousins, who I also want to have a big year, but boy, he shot pretty poorly. Jacked up too many threes last year, I think. This year he's got to focus more. Portland, good team. They were the 7th seed. They upset the Warriors, who were the 2nd seed last year. Golden State was young, but boy, they got there. But the Blazers need to be better. Gilbert Arenas, Jarrett Jack, you got Lloyd, Dunleavy, Batum, Fernandez, Aldridge, Seraphin, and Marcus Camby, and McGee behind him. This team is well balanced. They could easily catch somebody sleeping in the playoffs. We'll see if they are able to do that. And finally, the Golden State Warriors. These are the guys who everybody out west is worried about. Like, this team won 55 games last year, and they were young, and they're another year older, and they've gotten a little bit better. You got Steph Curry and Mike Bibby right behind him, Monte Ellis and Anthony Morrow, Corey Maggette, Reggie Williams, Kenyon Martin, and Anthony Randolph. Randolph did not really give them a ton last year. 12-8 and 43%. It was rough. Martin basically he was way more efficient and was not as good, but he's more of a veteran presence, and at this point, better defender than Anthony Randolph. He's going to get the nod, I expect. And then Greg Monroe, Brandon Knight, Biedrins. Monroe put up good numbers for this team. He's the kind of big man that the Warriors in real life traded for in terms of Bogut. Bogut was a better defender at this juncture, but Monroe is much younger, much healthier. So the Warriors, they're the sleeper pick. They're my sleeper pick, dark horse contender for a title if it's coming from the West. And that brings it back to the Wizards. That is everybody. Thank you for listening to me drown on long and over and over and over. This was a 50-minute video. Good God. Okay. I'm sorry it took so long. thanks everybody, and have a good one.